Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. In this episode, you'll hear part 2 of my conversation with Kem Barfield from Three Rivers Community College. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app.
You are about to hear part 2 of our conversation with Kem Barfield from Three Rivers Community College. Please be sure to listen to our previous episode to hear part 1 of this conversation.
So for people who don't know anything about assessment for prior learning, why don't you tell us a little bit about what that means in a college, in the context of college credits,
Right.
and then maybe a use case of why would someone want that?
Sure. So a student may have a background. Maybe they're working in a particular industry. Maybe they're military students, and they have a depth of knowledge in a particular area, or they've taken some kind of training program or whatever. And there's no college credit for it. If they're bringing college credit to us from some other college or source, we take that and we give them the college credit here. But sometimes they don't have the college credit, but they have the skills, they have a lot of the education and training that they need. And so they would come to us and they would enroll in our APL program, which, like I said, is usually a course that we run in the fall that essentially tells them how to put together that portfolio, gives them step-by-steps and shows them what kinds of things are important to include and the documents that need to be there. And then once that's done in the spring, they can submit a portfolio. And we, I think, are the last community college in Connecticut to actually still do this. There were a couple of others who are no longer doing it. It's not a revenue generating thing for us. It's only like $100 for them to submit a portfolio that could get them as many credits as they think they can put in there, and that we assess them for. Yeah. So it doesn't generate a lot of revenue, but it really does help a lot of our students, especially. It's especially valuable for students who are already adults and are out there working, and who may have limited time. And it's a way to speed up their time in college, speed them up a little bit toward their degrees.
I love that about you for putting so much effort into doing something. Like you said, it's not even a huge revenue generator for the college, but it is so meaningful for people, and it's also something that people forget, that colleges, especially in community colleges, where you can serve you serve people who have a life of experience, but may not have been recognized from a college credit standpoint, right? But also people who, a lot of people that I have met that didn't even realize that exists, and by the time they realize that, they also doubt themselves. They go, but what do I have to offer? I've only been doing this for 40 years. It's sort of like it's the same thing that I do. I mean, I already knew it. Like they don't even think that is anything special, because it had become so tacit.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to almost formally put something together that says, actually, hold on a second, I'm actually have a lot of skills, and those things are not they are valuable. They are not something that people that the formal education system should ignore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so meaningful, because it gives people, and that sometimes is the way of lifting people out of potentially a situation that they're in, that they felt like they couldn't get out of, because that might be able to give them enough credits that says, oh, if for me to then go and earn that college degree, I now have a path to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer need to take all, like a full load of, like college courses sort of from scratch, especially if I already don't feel like I find value in some of them, because I already know it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing thing that you're doing.
And I also want to point out that I wasn't the one who took the APL program and put it in
Mhm.
there. I mean, that's actually Amanda Caffrey who did a lot of the groundwork and actually put this in, and she manages that program today and does an excellent job with that. But I'm just excited that we have it there.
And Amanda is amazing
Yeah.
too. We got to get her on here sometime. Um, and So I know that you have over the years done a lot of different projects. I mean, I'd love to hear some of the things that you are seeing, what's happening in the world today. I mean, this last year, of COVID, of all of the, um, you know, um, social justice and unrest and all of these things happening. And still happening, and a lot of different sort of trends that's happening in higher education. What are some of the things that you see as a dean?
Yeah. Are you talking about in the portfolio world or anything?
No, just higher education in general. Yeah.
So I was going to say to you that in the portfolio world, one of the things that I was excited about, and I actually mentioned this at our Gen Ed committee meeting once, is now that we're a few years in, I said we haven't deleted any portfolios. We can always go back and we can do like a longitudinal study and see where students started, look at some of their portfolio items from their first year. And community colleges students don't necessarily finish in like 2 years. It may be 3 years or more, depending on how much they're working and how many classes they're taking. And so we can actually go back and look longitudinally and see how much that student's progressed. So our Gen Ed in the future could actually include that piece. How much did that student grow from the
Mhm.
beginning to the
Yeah.
end? Something that's probably easier to manage in a university or 4-year college. A little bit harder for the community college, but we now have the ability to do that, and I think that's excellent. Another thing in the portfolio world that I think has has really helped us is um, our public speaking classes. The instructor there, the program coordinator there, is really taking this on board and believes in it. And he is always the first person to ask us if we've created the courses for our assessment and digication, so that he can get that in. We run a number of those public speaking classes. And so he feels that it has really opened up his ability to have students create portfolios and to be able to assess that piece, because now they can record themselves. We were doing it on campus with COVID going and the pandemic. They can still do those things at home and still include them in their portfolio, and we can still use it in that way. So those are two things that are exciting in the portfolio world. In the outside of that, our world is kind of technology in general. Prior to the pandemic in 2019, we were creating a special lab on campus, and the lab was going to allow us to teach students remotely in real time. And so we set this room up. And we've got like two large touch screen monitors in the front. There's an instructor station. There is a motion sensor on the front wall and on the back wall, and it follows the instructor as they move through the room. There are microphones mounted in the ceiling so we can pick up the student conversation. And there's a monitor mounted in the back of the room that the instructor can see, where remote participants would be there. And the remote participants could actually participate in that class with the live students there. Um, and then there was a lot of technology at the instructor station. It connected in with WebEx. And so there were a lot of things going on. And this room cost us a lot, and we invested in it. But the thing that perhaps what's most valuable to come out of that was, and we built this and we ran a pilot with the with our architecture of the world class, and it did very well. And then we were going to run it again, and we were going to expand it to other types of courses and other programs. And then last year, pandemic happened. So the most valuable thing to come out of this was I was saying what we really have is a new kind of hybrid. We were trying to figure out how to fit it in. Was it a traditional class? Was it fully
Mhm.
online?
Right.
Was it a hybrid? I was saying it was a new kind of hybrid. And talking to our colleagues in Hartford, they were saying, well, yeah, hybrid maybe, but we don't want to confuse it with the definition that we're using for hybrid online courses. And they said, why don't we just register the students in two groups? So one student group will actually take this as an on-campus class, and the other group of students will take it as online, and that's the way that they will register. But it's not the standard online. This is actually a live remote class that you're doing. So let's call it live remote online. And so that's what we did. We created and it took some work because we had to create this in Banner, this instructional method, and we built all of that. And then the pandemic happened, and then we had to push everybody out, and we called everything Elron. So everything was live remote. So
You were just early. Did
yeah,
you know something we didn't know?
yeah. So it was actually very convenient that we had that already, that we didn't have to scramble to
Right.
try to set something up.
Hmm.
But I would say
I
we
mean,
were
it's
we were the first to have that.
yeah. There's something. I mean, I'm not surprised in many ways because you've always been very innovative in that area, and even without the pandemic, it was something that is, it's got some sort of like the writings on the wall, so to speak, right? And but that certainly had accelerated the need for something like that to happen.
Right.
Um, what do you think going forward into the fall semester? Now, people listening to this is probably going to be fall semester would have started already.
Right.
So, but now, we are now still in the summer, and as we're talking, what do you think the fall semester will bring? At certainly, at Three Rivers, and what are you looking for?
Yeah. Well, at Three Rivers, we're we have designed a schedule that's about 50% on campus, with the idea that we are requiring all students to be fully vaccinated, and the expectation, of course, is that faculty and staff who are on campus would be fully vaccinated as well. We are we are still saying that, at least as of right now, that everybody still has to wear masks, and we have to have some social distancing. um, we have other protocols for cleaning and things like that, and we're going to leave those in place as we get into the fall. We've been monitoring and very concerned about that Delta variant of the coronavirus, and we're connected with our um, Department of Public Health for the state, and so we're getting information and we're communicating with them continuously. I feel very good about our ability to be able to continue to do on-campus classes through the fall, because we were successful the previous fall when the pandemic was raging and there was no vaccine. We saw at this college that our protocols worked.
Mhm.
We and I'm not saying no one had any cases of COVID. We actually did have a few of those in the classes. We had some among the staff, but it usually, well, in every case, it was an external source. A student ended up with something, or
Mhm.
a staff member would end up with something, and
Mhm.
then we would notify everyone in the class. That person would come out and quarantine for the requisite amount of time, and then everyone else would continue, and we didn't see any community spread. So those measures that we were taking were working, even
Mhm.
without the vaccine. So
By
I'm
the way, the whole cleaning part, I mean, why don't we just clean anyway? I mean, I think we all enjoy a better, cleaner environment.
Well, I mean, it was extra cleaning. So it was like the facilities people were going around and they were cleaning
Yeah,
like door handles between classes and things like that. So it's the extra work.
yeah.
Yeah, we are always cleaning, but this is
I joke, but I must say, to anyone who's listening to this, I hope you appreciate all of the cleaning that people do, sort of behind the scene. It's all jokes aside, is extraordinarily hard work
yeah.
to just keep it all safe for everyone. Um, and what do you think about? Um, after this year of live remote um, online, what do you see some students liking it, not liking it? What is and what about faculty?
Yeah, so uh, there are classes that filled up when we made them live remote, and clearly students showed a preference for that modality for those classes. Other classes didn't run as well. And certainly, I heard from students, as the dean, I heard from students that they wanted to be back on campus. And I also heard the other one, that the students who had to take their lab science class on campus, that they wished that it could have been online. So I heard it both ways. I think that as we go forward, we've got probably about 20% of our classes and about 30% of our students will take classes that are online, and that's been consistent throughout the past 5 years or so. Um, and we will probably continue that. And so as we go back and bring more things to campus, I'm also seeing that there's a possibility that we can continue with LRON. It works for a lot of courses. I'm thinking about 10 to 20% of our classes in the future will be LRON as well. So we could have as much as like 40% of our classes that would be some form of remote or online. And
And
that's
you
that's when
monitor,
that's when everything's
right,
back to normal.
right, and you monitor them, and the great thing is that the students, they sort of in a way vote by registration, right?
Right,
They kind of say, hey, if everyone's wanting to register for this class in this kind of method, you have a very clear way to know what the demand is.
right. But we've also found that we really do just need to keep our capacity and our ability to be able to pivot. We need to make sure that our systems stay strong, and that everyone remains trained, so that when they do, or if they do have to go online for any reason, that they're able to do that successfully and easily.
Yeah. Do you think that after this year of COVID, people having had to make that change somewhat more suddenly? I mean, you guys got a little bit of a legs up because you had done a lot of that legwork
For
before.
some, I mean,
Yeah.
we had, just like I think every college, we had a few of our faculty who were just not quite ready, and it took quite a bit of work to lift them up to where they needed to be. And then with a couple, we still had to support them throughout that process. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's probably unavoidable in all situations. I mean, I couldn't imagine almost probably any companies, that had to do that. They probably had to help out somehow
Right,
for certain people, but the percentage is probably low at this point because COVID kind of forced you all to have to go through that process,
right.
didn't it? Um,
So that slow cultural shift that I did to get us on portfolios here,
yeah.
we've also discovered that if a pandemic happens, we can actually make that shift overnight.
So they all the different methods work,
Yeah,
but maybe. Well, you see, it comes back down to the kind of leadership and the culture that you build at the institution. I think that there is definitely a sense of, what at least what I saw at Three Rivers, during the pandemic. I mean, we kept in touch and we had checked in, probably like once a month or so,
hmm,
either with you or Amanda, and it really did feel like that you guys had a pretty good good plan throughout, having ways to handle whatever it is that you needed to handle. So that's um, you know maybe that's that sense of it's mission critical. It needed to be done, so it will get done.
yeah,
You'll figure it out, right?
yeah,
Um, although I do think that everyone else also got thrown into that sort of mentality and that deep end. I think the most maybe not all of us, but most of us made it, right.
yeah, yeah,
So that speaks to some kind of the resilience of the institutions that exist. Sometimes we think about certain institutions not being very efficient, but then when it really they need to step up, I think many did. They did their best, and it worked for the most part. And I actually wanted to talk a little bit, maybe to wrap up. I want to talk a little bit about um, your thoughts on the role of community colleges. It's something that I'm very interested in because I think that um, in the landscape of higher education, there's so many models that remember the MOOCs, right? And they still exist, but in very different forms now,
Mhm.
right? The various kind of training, vocational, like training. Um, Community colleges takes a very special part of the higher education sector, and in fact, it's a very large, very large number wise. In higher education, that a lot of people don't even know, and but I want sort of your take, someone in the trenches, your take on, the role of community colleges, because I just think it's amazing what you do, and the service that you provide to your students.
Yeah. So one of the kind of flippant things that I say is that the students who go to Harvard and Yale and MIT, we could put those students in a room with a box of rocks and have them write a dissertation on it, and they would do it, and they would do it very well, and it would be a pretty impressive thing. Um, and the average student can't do that. The average student needs a lot more guidance. They need support, and I think then when you're talking about what community colleges do, we're the people that are the practitioners of education that actually do provide all that extra guidance. So we're saying, okay, here are the rocks, but let me tell you something about rocks first. And so you have some information, and then you learn how to analyze those rocks yourself, and then you learn how to put that dissertation together, and you learn about APA rules or whatever. And so I think that that's what community colleges do. I think that there's a strong niche. You know, we were talking to a few years ago to the submarine base here, the commander, and we were talking about what we needed to do to support students there. Um, and these are students who don't necessarily have degrees, but they have a wealth of experience in the military, and they are also people who get the job done. And so we're saying, how can we support them more? And he was talking about the new GI Bill and how the GI Bill gives them a lot of opportunity, and so now they don't have to go to the community college anymore. They've got a lot of options. A lot of them will enroll straight in the university. He saw that as a disadvantage from what he was seeing, because some of them would get in, they wouldn't do well. They didn't have the support that they needed, and so he wished that they would at least start at the community college and kind of get their footing before they head off in that direction, and they could save some money for the GI Bill and for themselves. And so I think this is also something that the community college does, and the community college is also the local college. When you're talking about some people in the community that may be disadvantaged, they aren't necessarily able to travel outside of their area.
Mhm.
Most the studies have been done. Most of the students that go to community college, you're within 10 or 20 miles of the campus, and so it's just a short drive. And for us, we even have some students who take the bus, and so it's a short bus ride, that come, and we try to support all of those students in a variety of ways, from the tutoring center, from the way that we design our academic programs, with job skills in mind. A lot of times, we had a project last year that we did, um, QA Commons, where we were looking at several of our programs, and we were trying to decide where we could incorporate employability skills for those students. The not the hard skills, but the kind of soft skills of working in groups, and how you deal with people and those things to make them much more employable. So we have an eye on that as well. We have a childcare center. We've got advising that we're sending students to. We're trying to do more proactive advising, where you're doing outreach and grabbing the student and checking with them several times a semester, even if they didn't ask you to do that.
Right.
So all of those things, I think, may be occurring at a university, um, and they may be available, but it's definitely happening in community colleges. And I think that it's a great place at minimum for a student to start.
I agree, and I will add to that. I will add that in community colleges, I mean, I work with so many community colleges, and the big common theme that I always find, and I always find to be one of the most underrated thing, is that everyone from the professors to the administrators, the staff members, they really take the top priority as the well-being of the students and the teaching and learning that happens in the classroom and outside of the classroom, but the general development of students as being their priority. And I do think that in some situations, you can have a university where um, it's it's not easy to escape, but like sometimes it's ranking, sometimes it's the research, sometimes it's the research money, sometimes it's the prestige, something else takes over as being the most important thing that is on the agenda. And it feels strongly to me that that's one of the things that students sometimes don't get, or maybe parents don't get, is that in a community college, everyone there, it's the one thing that they care about the most is just the well-being of the students and the learning that happens.
Yeah, and they care about it. And another thing for us is a number of our instructors are also people in the community, and people who are experienced in that area. They're not in the university doing research all the time. They're actually, our accounting program coordinator is an accountant.
Right, right,
Our architecture instructor and program coordinator is an architect. So
right, right.
so that's the kind of people that you have. You actually have people who are actually working in those fields who are there also teaching those classes.
Right. And there's that understanding of, hey, it's not just I've landed in this very comfortable space where I can, research and do the things that I like, almost like removed from the world. But you actually, your professors are the ones that are really in the trenches, just like the students will be in just a few more years.
Yeah.
And so they really, I mean, I think there's that relationship. It's is really valuable, and for many students, I think that it's something that they probably didn't realize that they're missing,
Mhm.
if they didn't know about it. Well, Kem, listen, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey and your experience with us. It's really wonderful to see that, and I hope that as we all go back to the fall semester, that we get this virus under control. The new variant, as you said, it's a little bit scary, but we'll hopefully we'll do the right things and do the sensible things. And but I hope also that you continue this kind of innovation and the leadership that you exhibited in this last, even just 10 years that I know you. But and we continue to do that, and looking forward to it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Digication Scholars Conversations is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative ePortfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. This episode was produced by Drew Albanesius. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching.